The year is 1187 AD. You are 31 years old and you have never seen France. Your grandfather came from Burgundy. You were born here in Jerusalem, in a house on a narrow street in the Christian quarter, 20 meters from a wall your grandfather helped build. You speak Arabic better than you speak French. You buy your bread from a Muslim baker named Yusuf, who has known you since you were a child. You have never thought of yourself as an occupier. Jerusalem is simply where you are from. The walls are still standing. That is the first thing you check each morning now, that the walls are still standing. It has been 11 days since Saladin's army appeared on the hills surrounding the city. 11 days since the siege began. The army that was supposed to protect Jerusalem no longer exists. It was destroyed at a place called Hattin 10 weeks ago in a single afternoon of fire and thirst. King Guy is a prisoner. The true cross is gone. What remains inside these walls is a city of civilians, clergy, and perhaps 14 knights. Not an army, a memory of one. This is the story of the last days of the Crusader Jerusalem. Not the Jerusalem of Holy War mythology, the real city. Limestone dust on your hands, bread from a Muslim baker, a daughter who has never known any other home, and an army on the hills that is not going away. You are a mason. Your father was a mason. You have spent your entire working life maintaining a city built by people who came before you, repointing mortar, replacing cracked stones, understanding the walls the way a doctor understands a patient's body. You know where they are strong and where they are not. You know the northern section is the problem. The ground rises there, closer to the base than anywhere else. You have known this for years. It has never mattered until now. In the first days after Saladin's army appears, the city tries to organize itself. Bélien of Ibelin, the highest-ranking knight to escape Hattin, has taken command. He knights every man over 16 who can hold a weapon. You watch merchants and craftsmen being given swords in the courtyard below the wall. The cloth merchant, 2 streets over, holds his sword the wrong way. He corrects himself. No one says anything. There is nothing to say. The city that surrounds you is not the city your grandfather took in 1099. 2 generations have passed. The markets sell goods from Cairo alongside goods from Genoa. The physicians who treat the Crusader nobility learned their medicine from Arab texts. Your neighbors include people whose grandparents were on the other side of the wall in 1099. You have traded with them, argued with them about grain prices, watched their children grow up alongside yours. The war that created this city feels very far away until it does not. And now, with Saladin's army on the hills and the walls absorbing the first probing arrows, it does not feel far away at all. By the end of the first week, you understand what a siege sounds like from inside. Saladin probes the walls, arrows, catapult stones, testing the defenses at different points. The garrison responds. The walls hold. Each morning you go to work on the northern section, repointing mortar, checking for new damage, doing the job you have always done. The wall needs maintaining whether or not there is an army behind it. You find the work steadying. Yusuf the baker is still open. His bread is smaller than it was, rationing has begun, but he is there each morning, and you are there each morning. And for a few minutes, the city feels like itself. He does not talk about what is happening, neither do you. There is a particular kind of silence between 2 people who understand that what comes next will not be the same for both of them. You have been friends for 20 years. You are learning in these days what that friendship is made of when everything else is stripped away. On the 6th day of the siege, Saladin moves his forces to the northern section. You knew he would. The ground rises there. You have known it for years. The catapults concentrate their fire on that section of wall. You watch from below as stones the size of a man's torso strike the limestone you spent last Tuesday repointing. The wall is strong. Strong is a relative word when you are the wall and an army is on the other side of it. On September 29th, Saladin's sappers breach the northern wall. Not dramatically, not all at once. A section gives way, the stone collapsing inward, and suddenly there is a gap where there was not a gap before. The garrison fights to hold it. They push the attackers back temporarily. But a gap that exists once can exist again, and everyone on both sides of the wall understands this. You are not on the wall when it breaches. You are at home, and you hear it. A sound you have never heard before and will not forget. Your daughter asks what it was. You tell her it was nothing. She is 4 years old, and she believes you. You hold on to that for a moment, the particular mercy of a child who still believes you when you say something is nothing. Balian rides out to negotiate. You learn this from a neighbor who learned it from a soldier who was near the gate. The governor is going to talk to Saladin. The city watches and waits. You go back to the wall, not to repair it now, but because you do not know what else to do with your hands. And a mason's hands need to be doing something. 2 days later, Balian returns with terms. They move through the city person to person, doorway to doorway. What you eventually piece together, every Christian can leave. The ransom is 10 dinars for a man, 5 for a woman, 1 for a child. Those who cannot pay, 7,000 of them will be ransomed from the city's treasury. 30,000 dinars drawn from funds the kingdom held in reserve. Those beyond that number face slavery. You sit with this for a long time. 10 dinars for a man. You have 10 dinars, 11 years of savings in a loose stone in the floor of your workshop. Your wife has 5. Your daughter is 4 years old. 1 dinar. 16 total. You are exactly covered. You do the arithmetic 4 times. It does not change. You will be free. The family 2 streets over has 3 dinars between 6 people. They told you this standing in the street, past the point of crying, in that specific stillness that comes after. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre will not be destroyed. Saladin said so. The city will not be burned. These things matter and do not make the leaving easier. The night before the gates open, you sit in your workshop for what you understand is the last time. The tools are still on the wall. The chisels, the levels, the measuring cords. You cannot carry them. You have decided to leave them. Someone will use them. The stones of this city will still need maintaining after you are gone. And the thought that your tools will outlast your presence here is the strangest comfort you have found in these weeks. Through the window, you can see the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. You have walked past it every day of your life. Your daughter was baptized inside it. Your parents are buried in the cemetery behind it. You are leaving tomorrow, and you will not come back, and the church will still be there, because the man who is taking everything you have chose, deliberately, not to destroy it. You know what happened in 1099. Everyone in this city knows. It is not history here. It is the founding event, the thing that made this place what it became. What you understand, sitting in your workshop in the last light, is that Saladin studied 1099 and decided to do the opposite. He is taking Jerusalem the way it should have been taken the first time. That does not make you grateful, but it makes the loss stranger than simple grief. There is no clean enemy here. There is only the city and the leaving and the tools on the wall that will stay when you go. On October 2nd, 1187, the anniversary in the Islamic calendar of the Prophet's night journey to Jerusalem, the gates open. Saladin's army enters. The contrast with 1099 is not accidental. He grew up knowing what happened here. He spent his life preparing to undo it. You join the column walking to the coast. The cloth merchant carries his youngest child and a single chest. Yusuf the baker stands in his doorway watching the column pass. You look at each other. There is nothing to say that 20 years of friendship has not already said. You keep walking. Behind you, Saladin's soldiers enter the city in order. No looting, no massacre. He weeps, witnesses will say, when he sees the Al-Aqsa Mosque used as a stable by the Crusaders, the mihrab filled with debris. He has it cleaned. The cross on the dome of the rock is removed. Women whose husbands died at Hattin approach him. He orders the living husbands freed and releases the women without ransom. The city taken in a day of fire in 1099 is returned in a day of order and deliberate restraint. You do not see any of this. You are already walking. You carry your daughter. You carry 16 dinars worth of freedom and 15 years of skill in your hands. Behind you, Jerusalem. The same stones, the same walls you spent your life maintaining. You do not look back. There is nothing behind you that your hands do not already know. So those were the last days of Crusader Jerusalem. Not the Jerusalem of romanticized sacrifice or holy war mythology, the real city. Limestone dust and bread from a Muslim baker. A daughter who believed you when you said the sound was nothing. 11 years of savings that came out to exactly enough. The Crusader kingdom lasted 88 years. It produced a generation of people who were neither fully European nor fully Levantine. People who spoke Arabic, traded with their neighbors, and called this place home. Those people walked out of Jerusalem's gates in October of 1187 and scattered. Some went to Tyre, some to Antioch, some to Europe, to countries they had never seen, carrying the Arabic they had learned and the memory of a city they were born in and would never see again. The city they left was the same city, the stones unchanged, the wells unpoisoned, the churches intact. Jerusalem in 1187 was not destroyed, it was simply returned. What that cost the people walking away, that is a question the stones cannot answer. It has no clean answer. The city keeps going. It always has. That was Jerusalem in 1187. Not the crusades of textbooks or films. The real days, the real city, the real people on both sides of the gate. If this changed how you see this story, or confirmed what you already suspected, subscribe to the Chronicle Prime and hit the bell. Drop in the comments, whose side did you find yourself on? And did that surprise you? We will see you in the past.